Hello everyone and welcome back to a Rise of Kingdom video. This is your boy Legend Ronnie and today we have Scipio Africanus Commander Spotlight. I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about Scipio Africanus. I want to give you the best tips and advices regarding him, best pairings and best talents in this video. The more you're going to listen to this video, the more you understand, and I want to start with the first tip. Scipio Africanus is not a 1 versus 1 commander. So this is something that you need to keep in mind because a lot of players will do the mistake. When Scipio Africanus will be released and maxed, we'll start doing those 1 versus 1 tests to see what he can do. And a lot of players will most likely test him with commanders like Nevsky. Nevsky, it is a purposely commander made for 1 versus 1 to destroy targets on 1 versus 1. He does such a tremendous amount of skill damage. He even works with Attila, right? Something that he wasn't supposed to work with, right? Attila is kind of a anti-skill damage commander and they work together really good. So if you're going to see Xiangyu and Nevsky demolishing Scipio, there's no reason to say, oh my god, Scipio is not good. Scipio is one of the best infantry commander that has been introduced since Rise of Kingdoms has started. And now because we are doing a commander spotlight, you need to understand the number of sculptures that you will need to max a legendary commander, the number of stars. You also need to know that talents only apply from the primary commander, also equipment only apply from the primary commander. His primary skill does AoE damage. So this is the number one thing that you need to keep in mind about Scipio Africanus. He's made for field fighting, for group fighting, for murder balls, right? He hits up to 3 targets and he debuffs those 3 targets that he hits, or whichever the number of targets he hits. He does 2000 damage factor, of course, is getting decreased as the number of targets that he hits by 15% for each additional target. But he is debuffing with health for 3 seconds, which is really huge. AoE debuff, damage with AoE debuff, this is pretty rare. There's a couple of commanders in the game that have that. So he is a very nice accessory to have for the murder balls. The second best thing about Scipio is his 4th skill, which it says that it does shield up to 3 allied troops, a 500 damage factor shield for 3 seconds, and it can trigger every 8 seconds. You need to understand something. This is the same thing that will apply with Trajan, with Mulan, with Joan of Arc, etc, etc. When it says allied troops, the number one priority, it is your marchers. That's what it means to allied troops. So it is a very high chance that even Scipio might just get a shield when the 4th skill will go in. And this is why I'm referring that he excels in the murder balls, because he does up to 3 targets. For example, Alexander only shields a target. This is what Alex's shield does, same as Scipio shield, I'm presuming, that will target the march with the lowest troops available. Except that Scipio is going to do it on 3 marches. Another very nice skill that Scipio has is going to be his 3rd skill, but you also need to take in consideration that it has an 8-second cooldown, while Alexander with his 2nd skill, it doesn't have any cooldown. It's all about the chances. It can go 3-4 times in a 10-second period, but Scipio has an internal cooldown. So for example, it cannot proc for 15 seconds and then it proc for 1 second, and then you have the 8-second period which it will not proc. So as nice as the 3rd skill is, I'm happy that they added infantry health, because if it would have been only the damage, then it would have been a little bit naked, because 8 seconds, that's quite a lot of time. Although when we are fighting now in the murder ball, it's all about up and down, going in, going out, and this will work pretty well, this additional damage with its chances. While the shield is conditioned by taking skill damage, and to take skill damage in a murder ball, that's a very high chance, which means that pretty much every 8 seconds, 9 seconds, or let's say 10 seconds, you'll have these 3 shields helping your allies or your other members. Maybe some of your marches are already dead, it's only Scipio there, so then it will just help your allies that are in the murder ball. So this is why I consider Scipio to be an exceptional commander for murder balls, because 1, it does AoE damage with debuff, and AoE damage which is pretty significant, and then you have the shields which will protect your allies, and then you have his expertise which increase skill damage dealt by 10%, which is not a whole lot for infantry. There is various other commanders that increase skill damage by a lot more than 10%, and you don't really see a big change for infantry when it comes to skill damage. But the other part which is very nice about his expertise, when target is silenced, rage grows 30% faster, which means that you don't necessarily need to put him second to Guan Yu. You can put Scipio with whoever, as long as the target that you're swarming will get silenced by someone else. So as long as that happens, your march will gain rage 30% faster. There's quite a lot of marches that silence, so it's a lot of reasons why you should definitely expertise him. Me personally, I like all his skill, but if you really wanna do a small investment, I've done a specific video for that. As a 5-5-1-1, I think Scipio is good to go in my opinion, but my recommendation is to expertise him, because you get additional damage factor up to 500, not just 250, and more infantry health, so that's going to be really good. And then you get the big part of the shields, you get 500 shields on your allies, and then the damage reduction 30%. I'm not really happy with that. To reduce a skill damage by 30% is not a whole deal in it, to be very honest, but it's the shields. The shields is the big deal. This will be the best talent tree in my opinion, because he doesn't have a lot of march speed, right? And as we talked about march speed already, infantry is not benefiting so much from march speed, and he needs any kind of march speed that you can get. So you got 6, 12, you got 18% march speed that you can empower Scipio with, while having the beauty of the support talent tree. If you're wondering why 1 point in Cage of Thorns, that is to activate any skills on the battlefield that are affected by slow. So for example, there is skills that require the target to be slowed. So I usually put 1 point in Cage of Thorns because it does up to 5 targets. So it also reduces their speed by a little bit. So Cage of Thorns is always 1 out of 5. I put it on most of my commanders that have the support talent tree. Now let's go into some pairings, because considering the amount of commanders that we have into the game, and considering that Scipio it is a versatility commander, makes Scipio very universal to be used with quite a lot of commanders, and some of the pairings, they will definitely surprise you. Like I said, the amount of pairings is quite a lot. You can go almost indefinite because you can include the leadership commanders, but I want to give you some of the best pairings that I personally think will work with Scipio Africanus. If you want to do just one march of infantry for the field, my recommendation is to go with Guan Yu primary and Scipio Africanus as a secondary. Then obviously the talent trees of Scipio will not make a difference which talents you're going to use on him. Guan Yu and Scipio, it is a very nice match-made pair if you're doing one march of infantry. Me personally, I only have good equipment for one march of infantry, and my second best good equipment it is for Trajan, and I'm very much thinking to have 2 marches of infantry in the future. But for now, doing just 1 march of infantry, I'm very much thinking to do just Guan Yu and Scipio, because I think Scipio it is a version 2.0 of Alexander. As Alexander does single target damage, Alexander does single target shield, but what Alexander has and is pretty unique, it is the debuff. 3 enemy troops in a circular area take 30% increased damage for 4 seconds. The second best pair for Scipio Africanus is going to be Alexander. You put Scipio Africanus first if you want to have the support tree, so you can have a better range engine. If you have a better range engine, you'll do a lot more AoE, you'll do a lot more debuffs with Alexander, you'll do the shields from Alexander as well, because the shields from Alexander are dependent of his primary skill. So the more skills you do, the more shields you'll do, the more debuff you'll do with Alexander, the more AoE you'll do with Scipio. So this is, in my opinion, the second best march that you can do with Scipio Africanus. It is a very nice synergy. You have a lot of mobility on this march, probably a lot more than you would need. You'll have the 2 instant damage, so for this type of fighting, going in and out or just touching the marches, and when they swarm you, you have to retreat back, a lot of marches will help you. And same is all this instant damage. I like to call it instant damage because all you have to do is just tap a target, and either this 1700 damage factor might just go in, or you have the Scipio Africanus skill that it's also dependent on attacking a target with a 10% chance it will go in. So this is why I like to call it instant damage, because all you have to do is just tap a target and you'll do damage, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. The third best pair for Scipio Africanus, in my opinion, is going to be Herald. Now there is a lot of reason why I would put Herald. There is a lot of attack involved and there is march speed as well. So Herald will make your march to be a little bit faster, to have a little bit of mobility. I would put Scipio Africanus first to have the support talent tree for a better range engine. So I would do Scipio Africanus first and I would put Harald Sigurdsson as a second. Now the reason being that Scipio is also a new commander and a lot of people will know he does AoE, he's powerful on the field, he might just need to go down. Same as Nevsky, people target Nevsky, people target Xiangyu. So it is very possible that even Scipio will be a target on the field. So if you put Harald as a second to Scipio, you'll have the counterattack damage from Harald, so the more people will surround you, the more counterattack damage you will do. You'll have the fourth skill from Harald, Stanford Bridge, which can pop all the time and you'll do more and more AoE damage, and you have the primary skill of Harald, so you'll do a lot of counterattack damage and you'll do a lot of AoE in the same time if people swarm you. Not to mention that you'll have the primary skill of Scipio, which hits up to 3 targets as well. Most likely it's going to be in a cone or a fan shaped area, which will still hit 3 targets when you're being swarmed. So it is a lot of reasons why Scipio and Harald will be a very nice pair to use on the field. Me personally, if I would have Harald and if I would have a max skill Pakal and you want to replace someone, I would definitely replace Pakal and I would do Scipio and Harald. But a lot of people just enjoy those single target results from Pakal and Harald, or when Pakal is swarmed, they enjoy those results. So I doubted that a lot of people will give up Pakal. But me personally, I would rather bring Scipio on the field, a Scipio and Harald, and just give up on Pakal. Number 4 March, which is kinda on my list when I think about it, it is going Scipio with Trajan. I've been thinking about this for a very long time to put Trajan as a second in command. My plan overall on all my accounts now is to try to bring Trajan as a 6th March on the field. Now, even as a minimum spending into the game on the Crystal Tech, you will be able to unlock the 6th March. And that is something that I have been planning on all my accounts, and that is something that I would advise you to plan as well. Maybe go for a 6th March if you have the capability to go for a 6th March, equipment wise, commander wise, and so on. So Trajan, it is a very nice accessory to have on the field, kind of a must have a little bit on the field, and a lot of people put him first if you're not having any problems with the hospital bills or paying some hospital bills. It's quite alright. Or Trajan and Mulan doesn't trade very bad at all. Trajan and Mulan does really good. There's so many buffs and damages reductions from both commanders, from Trajan and Mulan, that just works really good. Even if Mulan is not max, as long as you have the museum on Mulan, that can still work. I would rather bring a Mulan on the field than bring an Aethelflaed. Aethelflaed does more damage, but the results when you're getting swarmed and having an Aethelflaed, it's pretty huge, to be very honest. So how can we fix this? Putting Trajan as a second, and I mentioned in many of my other videos to put Trajan second to a Saladin, and I am using that on some of my accounts and it's working really good, surprisingly. It is a very nice and tanky march. I mean, it's always the last one to go down and people swarm me like crazy. Now another option you could do, if you want to keep Trajan first, if you want to keep the mix of troops from Trajan so you can keep doing the damage taken increase on the target by 20%, you can put Scipio second to Trajan. Scipio doesn't have any skills where it says that it needs to be only infantry in the march. Scipio being a versatility, you can put him as a second to Trajan. And then you can have Trajan first, Scipio Africanus second, and I think that will be a pretty banging march. But the problem is you'll have the leadership talent tree first, which will not give so many benefits to infantry. So this is something that you might want to keep in mind. The vice versa, which you can do, is putting Scipio first and then put Trajan second. But if you put Scipio first, then you have to do only infantry, and this is why you have to sacrifice the damage taken increase by 20% on the target. You will still get the troops capacity 10%, that will still work, which is pretty good, but it is the extra damage factor 300, which is not that big, and the damage taken increased by the target, which these two will not work if you're doing only infantry with Scipio first. And that is something that I have in mind as well, and that's why I've done the talent tree which I showed you regarding Scipio with the extra march speed, right? Because Trajan doesn't have any march speed, but Trajan does provide defense and health bonus. Trajan does provide extra defense. So think about how tanky your Scipio can become with Scipio being first, Trajan second, then you have the rage engine from the support tree with a lot of rage going on. So Trajan will still do that fast skill cycle. You'll get the rage restoration from Trajan. So overall, Scipio and Trajan might just be a very nice and solid super support march that does AoE and buff in the same time. So think about it. Me personally, I think that will be a pretty solid march to have. I was talking about leadership. There is obviously a lot of various other options that you can do with your Scipio. We have Mehmed somewhere over here, which a lot of people start to get him to max skill. So if you really want to do Scipio and Mehmed, that can definitely work. And there is various other options that you can do with Scipio, which obviously will all work. Like if you really want to put a Julius Caesar, a Frederick, a Mulan, or whichever march you want to think about it, you really want to put Leonidas with Scipio, all these combinations will work. But what I'm trying to do in this video is try to give you some of the best marches and combinations. Or you have a max skill Theodora and you want to put her second to Scipio to get this AoE. All these things works. You want to put Aethelflaed, that will work. All these combinations. That's why these versatility commanders are so good, and they always work to be max skill, because they just have so many utilities and they just work with anyone. And now going on the 5th best march, which I would consider to be the 5th best march for Scipio Africanus. And this will surprise a lot of people. A lot of people. Will be with Sun Tzu. First of all, if you put Sun Tzu first, he's 100% gonna be a target, right? Everybody targets Epic. If people will see you on the field with Epic, they will probably laugh. But if you have a legendary first, and you have Scipio Africanus, right? Then it should be all good. People see a legendary commander, they know Scipio Africanus, they know his infantry, they know you might have someone as a second, which is much more tankier, and you might not be a target. But I believe that Scipio Africanus will, with Sun Tzu, for a field battle perspective, will bring a lot of value. You get damage taken reduced by 10%, infantry health bonus 10%, 20% more skill damage, and AoE up to 5 targets. And you also get additional rage. So you have the support tree, and you have rage from Sun Tzu. So if you really want to bring a lot of AoE on the field, Sun Tzu is gonna have a comeback. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about this video and about my 5 best pairs for Scipio Africanus. And I'll see you on the next one. This is your boy Geroni signing off. Peace out, yo, and take care. See you on the next one, and stay safe out there, my friends.